2018 is on pace to be one of the worst for gun violence in the GTA. It hasn't been this bad since 2005, the so-called Year of the Gun. Michael Bryant was Ontario's Attorney General then and knows the pressure and urgency that politicians encounter when people fear for their public safety. He is now Executive Director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and as voters go to the polls to choose the mayors and city councillors to take action on violent crime, he joins us now for some perspective on this issue. Michael, good to see you again.
Good to be here.
Thank you for coming in. Let's just let's do some background. We mentioned the Year of the Gun, 2005. 52 gun deaths, 359 shooting victims in Ontario.
Right.
You were the Attorney General.
Yes.
I wonder how responsible did you feel at that time to solve that?
No, a lot, more than perhaps I deserve to put on my shoulders, in that I was exaggerating the role that I could play. However, I was on the hot seat, and during question period, I was on the hot seat, and the Premier was on the hot seat, and we were scrambling as a province to respond to this. Even though it's there's a role for the provincial government, but also we had most of the seats in Toronto, so it was very important for us in 2005 to be responsive to our constituents. And let's put it this way, I left question period one day after yet another gun death, and the security guards, who are known not to, or to be very professional, they never say anything to you about anything. She said, "You must have the weight of the world on your shoulders," and I must have looked like that. And I certainly felt like that.
Well, to solve something, you got to know why it's happening.
Right.
Did you guys have any idea why this was happening?
No. In fact, I thought to myself, doesn't anybody know why gun crime has gone up? And couldn't we have seen this coming? And what are the solutions? And in the toolbox, like, do you like pull out a little hammer and break it, and then you bring in whatever you need to do in government to address it, and there wasn't one. And government scrambles sometimes, and Dalton McGuinty is not a scrambler, he's not, but as much as he could be scrambling, we all were. Fantino was very involved.
The chief of the day.
Right, and he, Chief Fantino was on the phone with me, and the Premier's on the phone with me, and but we didn't have a whole bunch of solutions. We didn't have a whole bunch of things that we could come to the table with, although we came to the table with
I was
something.
going to say, you did implement some things.
Right.
For example, give me, 1, 2, 3 ideas that you brought forward.
Well, we made a $100 million investment and created the Guns and Gangs Task Force, where we put together police from all different jurisdictions in the same room with prosecutors from the two jurisdictions in the same room, and we put all their computers and databases in the same room. And it had not been done before. And the idea was they would go out, and and the organized justice team, as it was called, would be more organized than organized crime, because we envisioned it as an organized crime problem.
Did you think that would work?
Yes, we did. Although, it seemed to me, we knew that we weren't necessarily striking at whatever the variable was that drove the crime up. It did seem, however, that we would be able to go out there and be active and be seen to be active, so people would feel like their government was doing something.
Because that's important, obviously, right? You not only have to do something, you do have to be seen to be doing something.
Yeah, although in these times, the challenge is, if it is legitimate for people to be afraid, but to play to those fears, what ends up happening is that the most vulnerable in our society end up getting scooped up. And many years later, I would find myself as a defense lawyer to people who had been arrested by the Guns and Gangs Task Force. And some of these people, this was not what I had in mind when we set it up. The net was being cast so wide that it wasn't just picking up organized crime. It was picking up anybody in the vicinity of organized crime.
So in hindsight, do you think that solution was effective in reducing gun crime in the city?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I said that gun crime went down because it did go down.
But do you know if there's a cause and effect?
No.
You don't know if your ideas actually had an impact?
And this isn't meant to be critical of the Guns and Gangs Task Force. The return on investment has never been done. I don't know. how successful it has been. I get a sense that there was a whole bunch of arrests made. I have no doubt that there was a lot of convictions, but the extent to which it actually caused the decrease, we just don't know.
Could it be something as crazy? My recollection was that was a very hot summer. Could it be something as ridiculous as
Yes.
the ensuing summers weren't as hot, therefore people's trigger fingers weren't as itchy?
Yeah. Sure. It
could be.
It could be. I mean, but here's the thing. Social science hasn't given us an answer to this. We don't know. Behavioral science hasn't given us an answer to this. We don't know what causes crime to go up. And I over the last year, have been talking to chiefs, deputy ministers, retired, who've spent decades on this and said, we don't really know why gun crime goes up, do we? And they say, no, we don't.
Well, we do like to deal with empirically provable facts here on this program, and we do have some to share right now. And 2018 has been a very violent year. Sheldon, should we bring this graphic up here? We called some of the police services in the area to see how many homicides of all types, this is shootings, stabbings, etc., have happened. And, here's a bit of a comparison in the Greater Toronto Area. We'll look first in the column of 2017. Toronto at 65. We're at 85 now, and of course the year is not over, so much more than last year. Then let's go to Peel Region, 16 last year, 21 this year. York Region, 10 and 10. Durham Region, 9 and 9. Halton Region actually down a couple, 3 and 1. But overall, 103 murders last year, 126, including one last night. A 26-year-old Ryerson student last night. So again, the year is not over, and the numbers overall are up. Now, what jumps out at you when you see those stats?
That well, each one of those is a tragedy, but they're relatively small. We still live in a safe city.
That is hard to keep in mind when you see any murders, right?
Right. Multiply those numbers by 4, and that's the suicide numbers in the GTA. Okay? Multiply those numbers by 30, and that's the number of accidental deaths. Okay?
Car accidents.
Right.
Everything.
Right. So,
so perspective is the word.
Perspective, and you get afraid when you see those numbers. I don't think people get afraid when they hear about accidental deaths because they think it's not going to happen to them. But also, when you watch the news, there's no reports on suicides. There's no reports. There's rarely reports on a motor vehicle death, unless it's quite spectacular. And there's often actually no reports on homicides either until you get to a tipping point. And in Toronto, it's around 35. Once you get to about 35 gun homicides, then every single one is Armageddon. This
is not necessarily an issue, though, where logic prevails.
Right.
Can you sit here and tell people the Greater Toronto Area is still overwhelmingly a safe place to live?
Oh, yeah.
You can say that.
100%, yes.
These numbers notwithstanding.
No, that's right. I mean, these numbers, homicides are around 22nd on the list of how people die in Canada.
And yet, pretty close to the top of the list of what constituents want their politicians to solve.
That's right.
What do you do about that conundrum?
I'm not sure it's at the top of the list, actually. If you look at our budgets and you look at what governments do mostly, it's healthcare and education, provincially.
No, I mean in terms of crime. In terms of crime, people want you to solve handgun crime, murders. That's number one. They're not banging your doors down to solve accidental deaths.
Right, that's right.
Or even suicides, for that matter.
So you need to have an answer. And the answer usually comes down to one of looking tough and punishing. It's based on, it's a little bit of an Old Testament approach to crime. And it's based on the idea that everybody has a somewhat similar background. We're quite rational and orderly. And if we are shown a deterrent, well, then we'll respond to that deterrent. If we end up being arrested and going to jail, we will have learned our lesson and then be rehabilitated. That's what the criminal code says, but that's not reflective of life, and it's certainly not reflective of the people who end up getting caught up in the criminal justice system.
I'm not that I'm not interested in your answers to all the questions, but I'm really interested in your answer to this next question, because you're the guy who is representing an organization that cares about individual civil rights in our society. You're also a former Attorney General who was worried about crime, and you've told us how much that affected you when you were in office. John Tory, mayor, running for re-election, has asked the question, does anyone in Toronto actually need to own a handgun?
Right, yeah, no.
Your answer is no.
No,
You don't care about the personal freedom of somebody maybe being a sports shooter, being allowed to own a gun?
I was, firstly, no, I don't, but I was also entering an organization and wanted to know what the organization's view was. And the Canadian Civil Liberties Association historically has not taken a position on property rights, and that's what that is. That's about having the right to own a particular piece of property, and we've never taken a position on that. And if the choice is between carding and racial profiling on the one hand, and restricting people's access to property on the other hand, we're going to support the latter.
Toronto mayoralty candidate Jennifer Keesmaat, the chief challenger to the current mayor, wants a handgun and assault rifle ban in the city. If you did that, and again, it's obviously not a Toronto City Councillor's responsibility to do that, that's a federal responsibility, but if you did that, is there any reason to suspect it would reduce murders in the city?
Maybe at the margins, the lowering gun supply is positive. It is. So that will lower gun supply, so that would be positive. But to have a real impact, you need to lower all gun supply overall, and that requires gun control. That's going to require people to register their weapons.
And that's not on.
And that's not on.
Right. Not only Stephen Harper got rid of the registry, but Justin Trudeau is not for it either.
Yeah.
Patrick Brown, who's running for mayor in Brampton, wants to hire more police officers. Would putting more cops on the beat reduce the number of homicides?
No.
Why not? That sounds counterintuitive.
Because it assumes that the people who find themselves in alleged homicides, I mean, the other thing I was going to say about those stats is the allegation is that they're homicides. We don't know that they're homicides until the court's decided. Some of them may turn out to be accidental deaths. Yeah. But let's assume.
At the moment, the police say they are homicides.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a difference because by and large, the people who are in the criminal legal system or the people who find themselves in the criminal legal system, many of them, their lives are chaos. If you go into a mental health court and you sit there for a couple of hours and then go over into the non-mental health court, the regular intake court, you're going to find that there's really no difference at all. If one has nothing but chaos in their life, if one has a mental illness, if one is an addict, then the number of police officers, the existence of deterrence, there's too much going on for that to have any impact whatsoever.
So if I hear a political candidate saying, we're going to spend the money to put 200 more cops on the street, and that's going to reduce homicides?
It's not.
It's not.
It's not.
Let's do another idea here. The mayor of Brampton, Linda Jeffrey, who's running for re-election, wants to create what she says more employment opportunities as part of her Safer Communities plan. She says that would reduce homicides on the streets. Is that true?
Well, we don't know because, I mean, I think a job is for sure the best way to get a young person away from a gang and onto a different life, for sure. Most of the kids, when I say kids, I include young adults who are in gangs, are running away from themselves and running away from their lives, and they are living in chaos, and they are chronically immature, and there may be addictions as well. A job is a far better blueprint for their life than the one that they've undertaken by joining a gang because they needed to join something.
Best social program around, as Brian Mulroney used to say.
That's right. So more likely, but again, that assumes that we're going to actually prevent these homicides from happening by having more jobs. We don't know necessarily that it's going to have an impact, but it is a lot more likely to do so than the more police option.
We are, of course, I guess less than a week and a half away from municipal election day, so we are talking about crime as it relates to municipal politics. But is the municipal level of government the government at which we ought to be registering our concerns about this? As in, it's the government that can actually do something about this?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the police are the front lines within our society for the people who end up in the criminal legal system. But getting policing right does happen at the municipal level. Getting policing right has to happen at the municipal level. And the chief of police in Toronto and the mayor of Toronto can do more to change the way in which we deal with crime than anyone else. However, my view is it's a healthcare problem. It's not a crime problem. It's not a matter of order. It's not that we need to impose more order. It's not that. It's that there are people who are unwell. They need to be accountable for what they do. But if you want to lower crime, then you need to improve their mental health. And that's very different from saying they're not responsible for their crimes. I'm not saying that. They are. But if you want them not to commit crime, then we need to get health care in front of them before the police get in front of them. Because what happens right now is the police are the front line. The police only know and are only able to basically do one thing: charge them or not charge them. But they can't make them better or take them to a place where they might get better or start to get better. So what happens is they charge them, and then the next thing you know, they have a record, and then they can't get a job, and then they have terms on their release that requires them to come back, and it's a revolving door, but it's a revolving door of its own making. The criminal legal system feeds itself. That's what it does. And if we wanted to lower crime, one way would be to charge less.
Would that be appropriate?
Yes.
It would be appropriate.
Oh, 100%.
We charge too many people right now.
Way too many people. Way too many people.
And presumably there's a self-interest within the criminal justice system to do that. I'm
not saying it's a corrupt self-interest. Like, it's not like people say, well, this is going to help us. But it happens nevertheless. And you know, what do police use when they go to make the case to the police board for a bigger budget? They bring crime stats. And their crime stats involve both crime and the number of arrests they make and how they need to make more arrests. And if you look at most of the charges in our criminal legal system today, the number one charge is an administration of justice charge. It's you breached a term. Okay, well, that's kind of a victimless crime, right? Number two is simple assault, which is that. If you got a bruise, that's assault causing bodily harm. I can't tell you how many people are in bail court right now in Brampton because they hit someone with a spatula and have been charged with assault with a weapon. Most of the charges in the system are totally unnecessary.
Can we not have politicians, police services, citizens, an adult conversation about this so that we stop charging people who hit somebody with a spatula?
Right. I mean, it would need to happen on TVO, of course. All great things start on TVO. But yeah, we do need to have that conversation because we're making people sicker. We're not making them better. And we're just charging more and more and more every year and wondering why we have backlogs in the system. It's not because the process is so complicated. It's because there's just too much traffic. And there's too much traffic because there are too many charges laid.
Let's just, in our last 30 seconds here, ask for your overarching advice, given that Election Day is soon upon us. If you care about crime and you hear the politicians making various offers during this municipal election campaign, you're a voter.
Right.
What should you do? Well,
assume that all the promises around policing have been tried and have not made any difference. The more you hear about alternative forms of addressing dangerous behavior, if you hear the word mental health or you hear community supports, these or jobs, positive. I think those are positive. Something that lowers gun supply, positive. Something that involves more punishment, it has never made a difference in the hundreds of years that we've been using this system in our parliamentary system, anyways. And we've always had crime, and we've always had people in jails, and the overall trend is that has gone up and down and up and down, but we still actually don't know why it happens. And I think a politician who says that they know why is either willfully blind or trying to mislead people.
We thank you for your time and your advice. That's Michael Bryant, the former Attorney General of Ontario, now the Executive Director of the CCLA, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.